are now tuned in to this week's episode on Toddcast. It is our mission to bring you guest speakers sharing their latest and greatest tips, skills, stories and know-hows within their market. Let's get going.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's Toddcast. Today we're really excited to have Kayleigh with us, who is going to be talking all about her journey from practice to industry in the world of accountancy and finance. And I have a co-host today in the form of Megan Lemmon, who is also in the world of accounting and finance as a recruitment consultant at the One Group.
So I'm super excited to be introducing you all to one of my candidates, Kayleigh. So me and Kayleigh first started working together in the summer last year. Kayleigh reached out to me because she was working in a practice. So she was working for a Big Four and she'd qualified. She'd been qualified around about a year. And then she decided that actually she was ready to make that first move into industry. So we worked together, we had a chat, we spoke about a few different roles. And yeah, our time working together, we've been really successful. And yeah, Kayleigh's currently working as an FP&A Analyst at Bakkavor. And yeah, she's absolutely thriving and loving her role. Kayleigh, tell us a bit about your story. Did you always know that you wanted to work in finance, or did you just sort of fall into the industry?
I think pretty much I fell into it. So I went to Loughborough University and I studied maths with accounting, but I actually spent a year studying engineering and then hated it. But I only liked the maths part of it. So they let me transfer onto maths with accounting. And the reason I had the with accounting is just because my mum worked in accounting when she was my age. And that was pretty much it. I just wanted some application to the real world rather than just having a pure maths degree. And in terms of my actual degree, I got a lot more about financial management, and it just interested me when I went through it. But it was a bit of a quick decision. So in that respect, I then decided I was going to become an accountant. So it was a very quick decision. But yeah, so when I graduated, I then moved into practice. Again, it was what was available at the time that I went into practice rather than industry. I think ultimately management reporting I always found more interesting. I felt like practice was more accessible. So in the way that like the business model works for practice, they just want to get graduates in, trained up. Industry, like there'll be less graduate screens from what I've seen. So yeah, I went into practice and that's when I started studying for the ACA. And then 3 years later, I qualified. I then did a year extra working in practice. And that's when I decided I wasn't quite happy anymore and I wanted to make the move. And that's when I contacted Megan. And then, yeah, that's where we are today. And I'm now 4 months into working in industry.
So what do you think the advantages are then for people who qualify in practice?
So I'd say it's very dynamic. So you're constantly working on new projects, working with different teams. So in that respect, your ability to get more exposure to different things, whether that's different knowledge, different people, like the way they work, you have a lot more exposure to that just because of the nature of you might work on an audit for 6 weeks and then you move to a completely different team. At the same time where I worked in the international department, but there was lots of other departments. So you could specialize in kind of manufacturing or fashion. So in that respect, when I was training, I audited lots of different companies and lots of different industries. Whereas if you move into one industry, you only get exposure to that one industry. I liked that in that when I first graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I also found that, and other people might be different, as I got more qualified, I also still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I found the things that interest me. I quite like charity audits, and that's something maybe I could go into in the future. But yeah, so I think one of the big benefits is just it's just very dynamic, and you learn very quickly. And I think you also, there's a clear path of where you're going to go. So you know that in a year, after your first year, you'll become, or year and a half, you'll become part qualified. Kind of your salary increases. You know what exams you're going to do. You always know, like, in the next 6 months, I'm going to do this, this, and this. So it's not very static. But yeah, so it makes you learn a lot and get exposed to lots of different management styles and working with different people.
So, because you started, didn't you, Kayleigh, at a smaller practice? You left there, and then you joined a much larger practice. So your background is actually Big Four. So, yeah, what made you kind of make the move from a smaller practice to a larger one?
So there's advantages to both working at a small practice and a large one. At a small practice, I didn't just work in audit, I worked on accounts preparations, tax returns, VAT returns, and in that sense, you're learning a lot more about the detail and the process. But I then decided, after I worked at a small practice for 3 years, that there was limitations in terms of the size of the clients, and in that respect, it's kind of like the level of my accounting knowledge could only progress so much. So that's why I wanted to move to a larger firm. At a large firm, I found that the deadlines were a lot shorter. So there's a lot more pressure, but I definitely did learn and a lot more. And also I got exposed to the big clients straight away. So yes, it was very interesting. There's advantages to both. But yeah, that was why I moved from a smaller to a larger one.
And what would you say the disadvantages are? Do you feel like transitioning into a Big Four practice, do you feel like it's mainly the deadlines? And obviously your role was solely audit. So how did you feel about doing like a complete audit sort of position?
Yeah, I think that's something I didn't enjoy as much. I probably made that move in terms of I wanted to go to a Big Four to get that on my CV rather than the actual enjoyment of it. And I think that came out, and that's ultimately why I made that decision to move into industry.
So, Kayleigh, when you were looking for your new roles, then what made you reach out to a specialist accounting and finance agency? Like, what drew you to us in particular?
Yeah, so I find with an agency, they basically do the work for you. It's a lot less stressful. I found that, like, the results are quicker. I think, Megan, I got in contact with you like at one point, and then a week and a half later, I'd secured a role. I'd had 2 interviews.
Yeah,
And
really
it was quick, and I find with the prep work that you get beforehand, it makes you really efficient in terms of your prep work for the interview. And if you're going for lots of interviews at the same time, or you're trying to have a busy schedule at work and then also fit everything in, like, ultimately you don't have the time to waste. You want to be as efficient as possible. And obviously Megan was so lovely and made me so relaxed during the process. So I felt like I asked any question that I wanted. So yeah, and it worked out. So that's the main thing.
How did you come across as Kayleigh? So was it sort of our advertisement, or was you recommended by anyone?
Yeah, so I'd heard of you guys, but what it was is I saw another role, and you guys were the ones advertising. That's what I inquired about, and then that role was actually already taken, or was about to be taken. And then Megan recommended this one, which I actually got in the end. So it's that thing of Megan actually found the one that I got was actually something I found more interesting anyways. So as long as I told Megan kind of my background and my interests, you guys kind of do the work for me.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. But yeah, it was like the perfect process. It was just really quick, efficient, easy, and I think, like you said, I think everything was literally wrapped up within a few weeks, wasn't it? Which is,
Yeah.
it's ideal, really. So now that we've placed you in your new position at Bakkavor, so what do you feel like it's been quite a smooth transition from practice into industry, or do you feel like there's been quite a few challenges, and if so, what have those challenges been?
Yeah, so I think something I probably underestimated is the learning a whole new process. I spent 4 years, and once you know the basics of auditing, it's just applying it to different companies. The accounting standards don't change that much. They might change each year, but ultimately you have those skills and then you just apply it to different companies, whoever you're auditing. And then when you go into industry, you are responsible for a set amount of jobs each month, and it's learning a whole new process, but it's actually learning about the company as well. And I work for a large company, and there is still stuff I'm learning every week, 4 months in. So there is definitely, don't underestimate the amount of learning you need to do. It's very enjoyable, but yes, there is a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's such a big transition, isn't it? And I think it's so important that if you are thinking about making the move from practice into industry, that you really kind of take the time to look into the business or the organization that you're working for, because it is crucial for your development in the next, I'd say, like 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. And I find that I've gone into industry and realised how many different finance roles there are that I had no idea about. And so what I would say is definitely do research into what's out there. I think what I've landed in a role that I probably would have chosen anyways, and I was lucky, but I definitely didn't do research into different finance roles. I just assumed it was just all reporting roles, and that's not necessarily the case.
So on the flip side to that, what do you enjoy the most about your job at the minute, and obviously working for Bakkavor?
Yeah, so I find about my job that I'm working on different things all the time. And one of the things I was told in practice when looking to move to industry is that you can get bored, you do the same things all the time. And I would say month on month, I'm doing the same things, but my job roles and the different things I'm involved in there's different things. Every week I'm working on something slightly different. So I work for Bakkavor, and I work in group, and I'm FP&A analysis. And as part of that, I'm working on reporting our group P&L numbers. So I'm focused on the management reporting, looking at our KPIs every month, looking at our working capital, but I'm also looking at cash forecasting. We do quarterly forecasting. And then I'm tracking our actual numbers against forecast. So in that respect, I'm doing different things all the time. I'm also enrolled in our ESG reporting. So, and I work for a big company, so there's different things. There's so many people, and every week I'm learning something new, and something new's happening in the business. So it isn't the same all the time. So I find that really enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, actually, so just reflecting back slightly, so because obviously you've come from a big four practice, do you feel like that transition into a large corporate business has been a bit easier? Do you feel like if you'd come from a smaller practice, maybe that transition would have been a bit harder for you?
I think so, yeah. I think it helps that I came from a big four, in that you're talking to different people, you're having to build up a rapport quite quickly with people. I would say, like, in a week, I can email like 30 people, call 30 people, and these people that I don't know that well. So that kind of confidence to be able to talk to lots of different people is really important, and it's limited if you're at a smaller firm. And it's also your knowledge of like how big, if you audit a big organization, you get to understand their processes better, so that if you moved into one, you're a little bit more prepared. And I think if you're at small practice, you are limited. Yeah.
So, having experienced both now, what would you say were the biggest differences between working for an accountancy firm and working for an organisation?
I would say kind of your ownership of work. So, in the sense that now that I work in industry, I have a set workload every month, and I have control over that. I find when you're in practice, you're working in a big team, and you will do like a auditing at year end or half year, and you can have lots of new people working in the team, and that you need to train up, and things don't always go to plan. So I think it's a lot more predictable in industry. And as a result, kind of you can manage your time better. You're less likely to have to work overtime. You can, if you know that something's taking longer than usual, you have a bit more knowledge of how long it should take. And you can let people know about that. So I think in terms of like managing deadlines, it's a lot easier. But ultimately, I've been hired to do a set amount of work that we know about, whereas I find in audit, it was always understaffed. So from my experience, in terms of like work-life balance, I definitely have a better work-life balance now and less stress, which is one of the reasons I wanted to move as well.
I would say a lot of the people that I speak to that are in your situation, one of the reasons that they want to leave is because of their work-life balance. So I think, a lot of people would probably agree with you on that one. But if you was to give first-time movers or people that were in your position, let's say 6 months ago, one bit of advice, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, so some advice I would give is to do as much research as you can, talk to people that are working in industry, get an idea of the roles that are out there. There's the financial reporting roles, there's commercial finance, there's financial analysis, what I'm working in. There's a lot more than what I was aware of when I worked in practice, and also look at the industry. I liked Bakkavor because it was very relatable. I walk into a supermarket and I know that we've manufactured some of the products. So it's that kind of thing. I will tell friends and family, I know where that's manufactured. I can see that in the figures that I look at every day. But definitely do your research. There are a lot of roles out there. And I would also say, once you get into a company, there's ability, if you work in a large enough company, there's ability to move around and develop the role that you want to do anyways. If you kind of express interest, it can be added to your role and something else taken away. So it's just about getting in there. But yeah, definitely speak to people that you can and about it.
So is there much scope for you in your current role for career progression?
Yeah, so I think we touched upon this earlier. There's a lot for me to learn. I think one of the biggest differences between practice and industry is once you're 4 years into practice, you're quite senior. I'm not very senior now. I sit in a room or on a call and I'm probably the least knowledgeable person about the business because I'm talking to people who've worked in the business for 20 years and know so much. So in terms of my role, I can, I feel like 2 years down the line in the same role, I would still be learning new things. But yeah, in terms of, so the lady that was doing my role before me, she ended up moving into a reporting role. She works with the financial controller at one of the sites that within Bakkavor. So there's a lot of moving around that you can do and progression. Yeah.
And let's say, I know we're thinking ahead here, but let's say like in the next 5 to 10 years, do you sort of have a goal as to where you'd want your career to progress to? Or are you more just about kind of taking it day by day and just progressing more kind of in the short term?
Yeah, I think for me, it's going day by day.
Yeah.
There's definitely parts of my job that I want to develop. We are looking a lot at like improving our processes. So there's a lot of change already in the business without even me changing role. Like my role in 2 years could look a lot different to what it is now, even if it's the same title. So I'm just enjoying what it's like now. So yeah.
Perfect. And I think, Kayleigh, I think with your pedigree, you could have so many amazing opportunities. And I know at the time, I think you did have a few. So what made Bakkavor stick out to you and why did you decide that was going to be the role for you?
Yeah, so one of the big ones was meeting with the people that were interviewing me. They were so lovely and engaging that kind of sold it to me straight away. Another thing is I've gone into a forward-looking role, so rather than auditing, historic numbers, I was a little bit pessimistic about going into a reporting role, just because I wanted to do a little bit different. So now what I'm doing is I'm forecasting a lot, thinking about what challenges we're facing and whether we're reflecting that in the numbers. And I find that just a lot more exciting. And, 4 months in, I'm still finding that. And maybe one of the big ones is such a big organization. I didn't really know about them beforehand, and now I know a lot more. I realized I've been buying their products for years and never knew about it. So
I think we all have. I have. You go into M&S, the salads. I buy all of their salads all the time, and I didn't even realize until I started working with them. So yeah, I think they're an amazing business, and I think that the exposure that you can gain from them in the long term would be amazing. So yeah, I think I'm really, really pleased that, you've been really successful there, and I think you're definitely going to have a long-term career with Bakkavor, 100%.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. There's been such an interesting conversation with you today, Kayleigh, learning about all your experiences from practice to industry, and hopefully there's some people out there that you've really resonated with, and they will find what you said really interesting, and hopefully they'll make the leap themselves. So to end every podcast, we have the one word, which is when we come up with one word to end each discussion. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Oh, Megan, go first.
I would probably say my one word would be leap.
Okay.
Yep.
Kayleigh?
Yeah, mine would be journey.
Oh, that's nice. I'm going to go for development. So thank you all very much. And for all the listeners out there, please do not forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thanks so much, Kayleigh and Megan, for joining today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. If you want to be our next guest speaker on Toddcast, then get in touch with the One Group. And don't forget to subscribe. We would hate for you to miss the next one.